Hello everyone, my name's Cian. I'm one of the career consultants at University's Career Service. Thanks so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the invite. I hope you find today's talk a bit useful. If you have any questions, please do let me know. So this session basically came about because I was talking to Can, aka Lucy, and she was asking the question, about how can international students make the most of LinkedIn. And it's a really, really interesting question, and one that I'm particularly interested in myself, because I'm actually not from the UK. I'm not from as far away as Vietnam. I appreciate that's the other side of the world. It's a long flight. I've been there myself. It's a lovely, lovely country. But I'm from Ireland, and I found when I came to Ireland, I found it a bit challenging to establish myself here. And so there's probably two ways to answer this question. One is the short way, and one is the long way. So the short answer is, if you want to kind of use LinkedIn to help benefit you, it's to help build your network in whichever field you want to go into, and it's to help you understand the UK market. And both of those two things are really important as an international student, so that when you're going into businesses, no matter where they are, that you've got that credibility, that people understand that you have taken the time to build networks, to understand businesses, and to be able to move yourself forward, whichever field you want to go into. So, at the start I was asking what you use LinkedIn for, or which of you use LinkedIn. Most of you use it to put your CV, kind of your online CV online, and put yourself online. That's fine. For me, the thing you should be using it for, first and foremost, if you can't answer the first question I asked about your own career, is to research. To use it as a tool to find out what is going on in the industries. If you're in engineering or law or manufacturing or whatever it is, to connect with those people, to look at the groups, to look at the news in these areas, to kind of really see what's going on, and to follow not just people, but organizations, companies, and professional bodies. The second thing is to sort of improve your employability and start to build that network which you've talked about. You as students, there's no expectation that you will know everything or everybody, but if you're interested in your area, whatever area that is a great resource and gives you a chance to build a network as much as is humanly possible. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know what happened over there. So this is probably the second thing you can use it for. And the third one is to actually search for jobs themselves. Now, there's two ways to search for jobs on LinkedIn. You can either do it, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment. It's either looking for stuff that's advertised, or actually building connections with people and hopefully sourcing jobs that way. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes' time. So, which route do you think interests you? If you haven't figured out your career path at the moment, there's essentially 4 different routes you can take after university, everyone as a starting point. You can either work in an area related to your studies directly, you can work in an area unrelated to your studies, do some further study related to what you studied, or do some further study unrelated to what you studied. Pretty much everyone's career goes in those 4 directions. And it's up to you to decide which one am I most interested in. Because you don't have to work in an area related to your studies, but you absolutely can. So, we're going to come back to LinkedIn in a moment, but before we do, I think it's really important that we take a moment just to sort of figure out ourselves where we think we might be. So we need to spend a bit of time thinking about where we're at, what am I interested in, what strengths do I have, what weaknesses, and what I might like, and then matching that up with opportunities. So we're kind of looking at ourselves, what we bring to the table, and then we're looking outside and seeing what's in the market, what's in the economy. And then we're kind of trying to make that decision about what I'm going to do next before actually making a movement towards those. So in your own time, it might be worth having a look at this again and say, where am I in this wheel? Do I need to spend time to figure out where I'm at? Do I need to figure out some of the market? Do I need to do both at the same time? Or have I made that decision and can I start moving towards finding a career that you would? Little exercise for you all to do in your own time. And I did a version of this when I was younger, and it really helped me. Consult 5 people whose opinions you value and ask them what do they think you would be good at, you'd be suited at. Sometimes we're very close to our own careers and our own aspirations. It's hard to see the wood from the trees. But if you ask, you might ask your lecturer or your best friend or someone in the society or a cousin or anything like that, someone you've worked with before, and if you ask them some of these questions, they might give you some insights into your own career that you never thought of before. Again, this is something I found very useful. When I was going down a completely different career direction when I was younger, and one day my friend said to me, he said, you're my friend who's a teacher. And I remember thinking, I have a very stupid friend because I'm not a teacher. Why does he think I'm a teacher? And he said, well, you're my friend who teaches people things. And I was like, and then he told me all these examples. He was like, you did this, and you did this, and you did this. And I had this moment of, oh, my friend's not stupid, I'm stupid. I didn't think of that. I never connected with me. Oh, actually, yeah, he's right. And that's how I started getting into education and started moving forward. Sometimes your friends and your family members and things, they can really give you some insights into who you are better than you can sometimes. And this is really good because at least 70% of roles advertised in the UK are available to graduates of any degree discipline. So that means if you're sitting there and you want to change career, you want to go into something different, there's potentially a lot of options here which could be really useful to you. Has anyone ever heard the terms reactive strategy, proactive? A slight typo there, I think. Basically, reactive job search strategy, proactive job search strategy. Has anyone ever heard those terms before? No? Okay. So, basically, any job that you find usually can be put into one of these two categories. In the reactive strategy, you're basically applying for jobs that you found, so online usually. Whereas on a proactive one, you're thoroughly researching your area of interest, trying to source appointments or opportunities. In this one, you're very much responding to what's already being advertised. While in proactive, you're trying to create that opportunity yourself by building contacts through networking. The limits to reactive job strategy is that basically what you find is what you get, and there's not much else you can do about it. Whereas in proactive job market, there is potentially limited amounts of organisations you can apply to, but there's lots of competition on this side, maybe less competition on this side, but harder to find. Usually people do a bit of both. So we'll go into a bit more detail to kind of explain this. So proactive job strategy is often referred to as the hidden market, and it's estimated that between 40 and 80% of jobs out there are not advertised. So think about that. That's a huge amount of jobs. Nobody, by the way, can agree on this figure. There's loads of different LinkedIn did an interesting survey. They were talking to marketers. None of them could agree on a figure. So it's estimated 40 to 80% of jobs. So you think about it, potentially, I don't know, at least for every 2 jobs you look at, there's another one out there, if not more than that isn't being advertised that you could potentially be tapping into. And this is just extra information because there's no legal requirement to advertise jobs, but there is legal protections when jobs are advertised. So if, you might be asking, well, that's all well good, but how do I did this talk recently on hidden jobs, and someone said to me, well, that's great, but how do I find the hidden jobs? Very, very, very fair question. And a lot of it is about networking, but it's about trying to identify companies that you might be interested in. Companies like the culture, product, the service that are of interest, but ones who maybe aren't openly applying. So you might, for example, know that you're very interested in manufacturing. You love manufacturing. You're super excited about manufacturing. And there's a company down the road, and they're making something that you're really interested in. They're making, I don't know, bottles of water, and you just love bottles of water, and you want to work for this company about bottles of water. They might not be advertising a job that is of your level, but you might just really want to work for that company. So it might be a case of trying to build those relationships, trying to see, they might have an entry-level position that's a bit lower, maybe you could work your way up, or something that's a bit different, and you could move in sideways. Is that making sense? I'm simplifying massively because of time. So, again, this is a starting point to bigger conversations if you want to have it with us as the career service, but it's definitely something that's worth looking into. Just a little tidbit as well, if you're going to go down this route, don't approach companies knowing nothing about them because it creates a very bad impression. Sometimes people like to apply to companies and they know nothing about the company and then it looks really bad. So that's quite a bad one. And none that you have a genuine interest in as well. Even if you don't have interest, fake it, pretend you do, because it's very easy to spot someone who's done the research. So at least try and have a bit of interest in that one. And as well, I suppose with this one, be aware of big, large companies like the NHS, civil service, universities, because they don't really do this as much, but it doesn't mean that you can't utilize your network. And again, I've experienced in this because my last job at my last university, I got a phone call from someone and they said, there's a job coming up, it's being advertised, so it's not hidden market, but I know that they need A, B, and C. I know you have A, B, and C. I think you should apply for the job. And I did, and I got the job because my network was able to give me a little bit of heads up. And I wouldn't have applied for that job had they not told me about it. Because if I looked at the job description, I wouldn't have thought I was right for it. But when they talked to me, I was like, I'm right for that job. So, comparing the CV profiles to LinkedIn profiles, CV is much more rigid. It's usually about 2 sides of A4, whereas LinkedIn is a chance for you to be a bit more engaging, constantly changing, constantly updating. I usually look at my LinkedIn profile once a month and try and change stuff because things change all the time. So it's a bit more of a dynamic, fluid CV, but both are really important. Don't try and just have one or the other, and make sure you've got both of those sorted out. So we're going to have a look at some of the different sections, just to give you a bit of an idea. Photograph, headline, summary. Even if you don't do anything else and you just do these, at least you have a starting point. Please make sure you have a photograph. Do not be one of those people who've got the weird blank face on your profile because it looks like a spam or a bot, and I actually know a lot of people won't connect with you at all. I will, because I'm sad and will connect with anybody, but a lot of people won't. And so it's a really good thing to keep that in mind. Your headline. This is just an example of how you might use your headline. So you might say, right, I'm a student at the University of Exeter. Doesn't really tell us very much, but you might say, oh, actually, I'm doing a BA Business and French, student interested in management consultancy. So it's not amazing, but it's a bit better. Or you might say, I'm the chair of Vietsoc, first class honours, business and French students seeking graduate management consultancy roles. So can you see the difference here? How we're going from I'm a student to I'm a student in a particular area to I've done all these things outside of my degree and whatever. I mean, all of you here today, you're all members of the society, you're all actively involved. It shows that there's different things you can put in, there's different slants you can put on your experience, and never undervalue your experience. So many students and so many graduates I've worked with say to me, that doesn't mean very much. They worked for maybe a family business, or they worked in a part-time job over the summer, and they think, oh, that's not relevant. It is relevant. It absolutely is relevant. So don't undervalue your experience and what you bring to the table. Everyone here has come to a different country and done a degree in a different language. That is such an impressive, that is just an incredible thing to have done in your lives. All of you should be incredibly proud of yourselves. It's a huge achievement. So you can take your experiences and put them in a way that really sell yourself, because that shows resilience, it shows intelligence, it shows ability to adapt. These are all really, really important skills in the modern graduate market. So, as I said to you with the summaries, with the different profiles, there's different ways of doing this. You don't have to follow this method, but quite a solid way of doing your summary is to talk about who you are, what expertise you have in whatever field, and a bit about your background, just to give yourself a bit of a structure. But different people approach it different ways. That is just one way you might want to have a look at and sort of consider. The background, so it's a bit like a CV. You're trying to add a little bit more detail. Just like a CV, you're trying to add a bit more detail. But it's important we keep our target audience in mind. I hope everyone here knows that when you're applying using application forms, cover letters, CVs, we are adapting them to the audience of who we're applying for. So we need to think about our experiences and which parts are most relevant to them. Sometimes I look at people's CVs and they'll be applying for a job with this, and they'll have something on the CV that has no relevance, and I'll say, well, why didn't you talk about the bit, some other part of the CV that was relevant? They go, I never thought of that. Well, actually, we need to think about those things. We need to think what's relevant, what does the employer, what does the company, what does the manager need, what problems do they need solving, and what experience do I have that can solve it? And that can be difficult. I appreciate that. So you might want some help with that. But it's the same in your LinkedIn. As much as possible, we are trying to sell this. We're trying to sell your skills, your experiences. Anyone have any questions so far? Now, there's once you do. So we talked a little bit about doing your photograph, doing your byline with your intro that we did a few slides back, and the summary. Hopefully that's your baseline, that's your minimum that I think you should be doing on LinkedIn, as well as your kind of background information. But further you go down, there's some other options for you to do. So for example, you can list all your skills, and then you can ask people to endorse the fact that you've had those skills. The same for recommendations. All of you could go on and you could give yourself recommendations, because you're all working together, and you might think that's not important now. You're saying, okay, we're all part of the society, doesn't matter. But in 2-3 years, all of you will be in completely different industries. you will be all over, potentially all over the world, in various different roles, and there might come a time where you need each other for business or for work. Even people you might not be friends with in this group could actually be that connection. I was in that talk one day with so and so, and they could really help me. So you have those recommendations and stuff now. I kind of went off topic a little bit there, sorry, but all this stuff is about building your credibility and building that connection with each other. And promise me, I promise you, your network with yourselves will become more valuable as you leave. So, as I said, I'm not going to go into, I'll give you a chance to read these in your own time, but it's important to, when you're connecting with people, to keep it short. There's nothing worse than receiving, well, I'm sure there's those things, but LinkedIn, if you get a big essay, when you open up it, you got a message request and there's like a big essay from a student. Just keep it short. Currently studying banking finance in Newcastle, we realize to connect. Sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes they'll say no, and if they don't reply to you, you can try again. They might ignore you again, so what? Doesn't matter. It's important to try these things and just be polite, be courteous, keep it short. But bear in mind as well, people are busy, and like sometimes people send me messages and I forget for weeks. And it's not me being rude, it's just I don't go on LinkedIn very much. And so be a bit patient, and that's okay too. And it goes back to what we were saying with the CVs and the cover letters and things like that. It's always make sure that you're tailoring. You're not just generically like hello, and you're keeping it, that you're just kind of copy and pasting and sending the same message to 50 people. If you can tailor it in any way, shape, or form, try and do that. So, someone was asking me before this began about kind of things you could say. If you do connect with someone, either on LinkedIn or in real life, I would just be as interested as possible. Just ask questions, try and figure out, because people love to talk about themselves and what they do. I was saying to you, I love to talk about careers. A lot of people like that. They really love talking about their jobs because they spend so much time doing it. And to meet someone who's interested in their job, they'll really appreciate it. I was interviewing someone recently about their career for a podcast series, and the interviewee said, I want someone to email me and ask me about my job because I love it and no one else in my family cares. And that's what he said. And in the podcast, he gave his name and his contact information. He was like, please, somebody email me. So maybe not everyone is as dramatic as that, but there are people out there who really want to help. So it's about trying to find them and an appropriate manner to do so. But it's really important to remember, we're not asking for a job. We're not asking them, hey, I really like a company, can I become the manager? It's not about that. It's not about saying, oh, I need to do an internship, please can you hire me, but only for the summer because I need to go back to university in September. It's about building that relationship. And if something comes to that, great, but if not, that's okay too, because it might be something that you rely on a few years down the line. And I've certainly found that in my career. I have the most random contact list you can imagine. I've got people all over the world, randomly contacts, and when I was in my early 20s, none of those contacts meant anything to me, but I just talked to everybody, as you can probably gather from today. I'll talk to anyone. But now I'm in my 30s, and my career's a bit different. Now it's like, oh, actually, I rang someone recently who I've not spoken to in about 6 or 7 years, and I was like, I've got a really interesting job opportunity thing for you. Are you interested? And they're actually going to do some work with the university. We haven't spoken in years. We've got a good relationship. We have that positive thing. So you don't know. It might not be. It's like planting a seed. It might not be useful right now, but in a few years' time, it might be. So the more you can work in your network, the more you can hopefully make use of it down the line. So again, we're looking for information. We're looking for advice about your career. You're getting different perspectives. People have different opinions. I work in higher education. I have a very specific perception of my area. I'm sure different people have different perceptions of good and bad, and the more people you speak to, the more ideas you can get. And then just start small. You don't need to message 100 people. Just start 1 or 2. Just see how the conversation goes, and just build those relationships as much as possible. Just for time, I'm going to skip a little forward a little bit. So this is a list of potential questions that you could ask. You don't have to ask these questions, but it's a potential thing you could do. You also don't have to just have that conversation on LinkedIn. You might have a Zoom conversation. You might be able to go to an office and meet with those people. You might be an email conversation. Depends. But these are some of the things that you might want to ask. And it's just about trying to absorb information as much as possible. Just ask, even if you think it's a stupid question, it probably isn't a stupid question. Just ask whatever you can think of, put it in there, and it'll be fine. Now, we talked about finding jobs. I said we'd come back to this a little later on. So we will. So the job section, you can set up alerts on LinkedIn to tell you when jobs come up in specific areas. So when they're posted, the company, experience level, there's loads of different filters there, and you can set it up so it will give you a notification when that happens. What I always say to people is, this is great, but take this as a starting point and then go to the company's website and double check the job is still there. The reason being is sometimes the job's filled and then I'm like, oh yes, this is a great job, but actually it's not there anymore. So double check where possible. Sometimes it's not clear and you can still apply, that's fine, but just from experience, websites like LinkedIn, Indeed, just make sure that it's still on the website. And thankfully, the graduate job websites tend to take things down much quicker, in my experience. But with LinkedIn, that's one thing I would be aware of. But it's still a really good resource to help you highlight some roles. The really important thing just to ask yourselves when you're applying for stuff, build up that confidence and realize what you can bring, and just ask yourself these questions. What am I good at? What can I bring to this organization? What experience do I have? And whatever experience you have, how can I make it relevant? And I think interest is a big thing as well. If you're going into an organization, you don't have to know everything, but the fact that you're interested, that you're passionate, that you want to learn, use that. Because so many people work in businesses for so many years and they're just tired and they don't care. So you coming into the room and being like, yes, I really want to learn, that's a big asset for organizations sometimes. And do you have any weaknesses that I can turn into strengths? So for example, you might think, right, okay, I'm coming into the UK and I'm going against UK graduates, but actually maybe you're willing to put in the extra work trying to learn a bit more, or maybe you've got some experience because you've worked in different countries, so actually you being an international student is a really good thing because you can turn it, all of you've got different multiple languages. That's so suddenly you being an international student isn't a weakness, it's a strength. So it's about you trying to get into that mindset of, actually, I've got things I can offer. Does that make sense? Okay, so I just love this. Believe in yourself. That's my big thing as we finish up. You're not the little cat, you're the big lion, the tiger. Sorry, I've been confused. Everyone started their career at some point. It's really important to remember that. Everyone was, where you are, starting off, trying to get some experience. And a lot of your experience will be relevant. You just need to find the angle. So you might think, I was working in a shop, it's, a little part-time job, it's not relevant. You're dealing with customers, you were multitasking, you were handling, difficult situations. All of these that you were team working. So whatever experience you have, try and think of how is it useful and try and sell that as much as possible. And even if you don't believe in it, even if you don't do it, just fake it. Just pretend. Pretend that you believe. Because eventually, I was terrible at presentations, and maybe I still am, I don't know. But I was terrible at presentations when I was a student, and I used to be shaking. I was standing there. The first time I did it, I remember there was a girl, she was sitting where you were, sir, and she said to me, look at his hand, and I was shaking. And I was so scared. And I just kept telling myself, I'm going to keep doing it, and now I do it for a living. And it's the same with all of you in your different areas.